As we observe Suicide Month in the month of September, welcome to Nesha Talks. This is where we have the platform to discuss such important information, and joined by the expert himself. That's none other than Dr. Nelson Makemba. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to another episode, and we're going to be looking at some pertinent issues surrounding suicide as we commemorate this Suicide Month, and we are going to dispel some myths and just discuss some things that might be of help to our people out there.
And jumping into that, when doctor says dispel some myths, I think before we unpack what suicide is, what are those myths that roam in the air and sometimes create this very bad stereotype amongst those that are going through suicide?
I think probably if you look historically again and culturally, what we've highlighted earlier is that men tend to be raised differently from ladies. We probably are traditionally told to get our acts together, for instance. We don't often know how to express our emotions. So that's why we find suicide rate among men is probably higher now in our setting compared to the female counterpart, first and foremost. Why? Because women are probably more likely to go look for help when they are going through all kinds of challenges. But men will probably bottle it up in there, and when he's no longer able to take it, he probably just do the unthinkable. That's one of the things that we need to recognize, that men do have emotions too. They do go through challenges too. They become anxious. They do panic as well, and the idea that men should be strong and just keep going is probably something that we need to readdress. We need to encourage men to speak more about how they feel, what they go through, so that when those challenges of life hits them, they too are able to knock on the right door. They can go to their general practitioner. The general practitioner can refer them to a psychologist, where they're able to have those psychological sessions where they can go in and just offload whatever they're going through, and even also be referred to a psychiatrist if there's a need for that, so that they're able to talk. And even ladies too, obviously, in as much as they are probably better off at seeking help, they need to also be guided in, what is the right thing to do, so that we actually are able to, deal with these incidences. And the numbers have actually been going up in our setting, especially since the onset of COVID. We have seen the suicide rate among men actually increased, and we have more men committing suicide in our setting, than the ladies, and that's something that, we need to look into, and, look at areas that we can do better in helping these men, so that they're able to fight these challenges and not end up taking their lives.
And as we conclude this conversation, we're going to give those tips and mechanisms how to deal with it. Many times people would say a suicidal thought isn't as major as somebody trying to commit suicide. What is suicide, and how detrimental is it? How bad is it from thinking to commit suicide and actually carrying it out? There are two levels: those that attempted, that didn't succeed, and those that unfortunately took their lives away. So maybe let's unpack suicide and the definition thereof, Doc.
When we are defining suicide, I think we will simply put it, an act of, self-harm that might end to a loss of life, committed by an individual is simply because, they are faced with challenges in life that probably they are seemingly not able to navigate in their thinking and see a way out of it. And, the only conclusion they are unfortunately, able to come to is to say, the only way to resolve the challenges I'm faced with right now is to take my life. Now, there's a difference between suicide attempt and actually, going ahead and successfully committing suicide. Suicide attempt is then defined, when somebody actually attempts to take their own life, but they do not, go ahead in succeeding in doing so. Now, there are a number of reasons why that might happen. First and foremost, it could be somebody that was determined to end their life, but in the process, somebody noticed or somebody catches them while they are doing so, and they are able to intervene, and that process is then halted. It doesn't go, to completion. We also have, a unique, peculiar, setting where somebody is going through a lot. Their intention is really to get help, but they don't know how to go about it. So they become self-destructive. They do things, that, might, seemingly appear to harm them, but they don't necessarily go to an extent of taking their life. And then in doing so, they hope that people notice, and then they can come on board and trying to help them. The suicide attempt is common with a female compared to the male counterpart, because ladies oftentimes they use, sort of milder methods. She might just take down about, 10 Panados, and then, she start vomiting and not feeling so well, and then people look around, they see a packet of, Panados that is empty. Compared to men tend to complete, the act of committing suicide because their method are quite aggressive. A man will take out, a gun and he will just shoot himself, for instance, or he will go and drive his car off the bridge, or he will drive recklessly, get involved in an accident, and then, he shatters his vehicle, it becomes mincemeat, and then he's gone. So the reason why men often tend to complete the suicide is because the methodology they engage in oftentimes is aggressive, and, there's no coming back to that. And ladies, sometimes their approach is a little bit milder, She might, cut her wrist, for instance, but she doesn't cut herself so deep, and then when you check, you realize something is going on there. But that methodology might not necessarily always lead to a loss of life. But also you do have an element of women then that might actually do something aggressive so that, actually it results in the loss of their lives.
Yeah.
And with the information age that we are living in, unfortunately, people also uses, this, search engines, to find the methods that might work. And this is why we have to actually be very aggressive in campaigning and creating awareness, because somebody might go on Google and search how to commit suicide without fail. And Google, unfortunately, will give you all those options, which is not necessarily the best thing. But, if people do engage in some of those, suggested methods, we might end up losing these lives. Yeah.
Doc, in conclusion, they say, check in on the friends that laugh the most, that smile the most, the ones that seem the happiest.
Yeah.
We've seen these marketing advertising campaigns where there was this one gentleman, and he's at the soccer matches.
Yeah.
He's, celebrating, but he's the one that ends up committing suicide.
Yeah.
You've mentioned some telltale signs, but sometimes you can't predict that somebody who looks the happiest in the room is going through suicidal thoughts. What are the preventative measures, and what are those, let's say, call lines to help someone if you notice, hey, Ilka's not doing too well. I think she's, faking that smile for a bit. How can we help someone in need?
First and foremost, let's look at some of the telltale signs that you might pick up. For instance, if somebody become withdrawn, you have known this person for the longest, they are bubbly, they are outgoing, but all of a sudden they are just withdrawn. They don't want to engage with the outside world, maybe just walk home. You call them up, hey, let's go out for a drink. They are seemingly coming up with excuses all the time. Can I come over to just check how things are? No, I'm busy, you can't come now. Or even a colleague at work, they're probably the one that often get the task done. But all of a sudden they are slacking behind. The boss is always shouting, why are you not, meeting your deadlines? The person is not able to focus or concentrate, for instance. Those might be telltale sign that something is brewing here. And then there will be those that are able to mask what they are going through. You probably might not be able to tell at all that there's something going on here. So the idea of always checking up on your friends, quite an excellent one. We need that social interaction as human beings. I think human beings weren't created to live in isolation. Nobody's created to live as an island. So you always need to have somebody check up on you. It just feels good also to know that somebody really cares, that they're able to call you and say, look, I was just, making sure that you're fine. So the culture of us able to communicate, always checking up on each other is probably something we need to advocate for. And also, if you look at, for instance, mothers, for instance, especially after they've delivered, they go through postpartum depression, and that also might actually force the mother to commit suicide or even harm their, their little ones, So if a mommy is, sort of displaying those signs that might suggest that she could be depressed after she has delivered her little one, those are the kind of things that you need to look out for. All hospital facilities, be it private or state, should be able to attend to any, mental problem, and suicide also is one of those. So if you have a loved one, that might have attempted suicide or you're worried, you can take them to any facility. Any general practitioner that's probably in clinical practice should be able to help as well. And then obviously the referral system of, sending you to a psychologist if there's need be, a psychiatrist if there's a need be, and even rehabilitative centers. We do have quite, a few good ones in our country. For instance, depending on, why the person is probably tipping over to the, side of wanting to commit suicide, one can make an evaluation, and if there is need to be institutionalized, where you are maybe kept in a facility for a month while you are just sort of getting in a better space again, that is also an option that we can look at. And if one probably follow those, channels, you might be able to save a life.
Yeah. Doc, thank you so much. I think it starts here to let us, remind each other that we're here to care, to support, and there isn't a problem that's bigger than taking your life.
Definitely.
Doc, thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
There you have it. Nesha Talks. You can subscribe, and please share it with someone that really needs to hear this discussion, as we're here to share the good news. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next month.